When you learn English 24/7, it's helpful to start with stories that are simple and easy to understand. This way, you can gradually build your language skills without feeling overwhelmed. The key is to choose stories that are clear, straightforward, and specifically designed for learners like you. A great resource for beginners is Graded Readers, which are books written for people who are new to English. These books come in different levels, making it easy for you to progress at your own pace. At the beginning of your English learning journey, it can be tempting to jump straight into complex texts like novels or news articles. However, doing this may leave you frustrated because you might not understand the vocabulary, sentence structures, or context fully. Instead of helping you improve, this approach can slow down your progress. That's why starting with simple stories is a better idea. These stories use clear and easy-to-follow language, helping you build confidence and comprehension from the start. For example, look for short stories or books that are specifically designed for beginner learners of English. These books often contain short, simple sentences and common vocabulary. As you read, you'll start to recognize patterns in how English works and understand words based on context. This method makes learning English feel more achievable and less intimidating, especially in the early stages. To begin, try books that are written for beginner-level learners. These books follow a clear structure: short sentences, simple vocabulary, and everyday situations. For example, a story might be about a visit to the park, going to the store, or a day at school. These topics are familiar to most people, and the language used is practical and easy to understand. Another excellent option is Graded Readers. These books are organized by skill level: beginner, intermediate, and advanced, so you can pick the one that best fits your current understanding of English. The language in these readers is tailored to your level, helping you gradually build your vocabulary and comprehension. For instance, a beginner story might describe a character going to a grocery store. The sentences would be simple, like, "Sarah went to the store," or, "She bought some apples." While the language is basic, it's enough to convey the meaning without being overwhelming. By reading these stories, you'll learn how sentences are constructed in English and recognize everyday words. One of the best things about simple stories is how they can boost your confidence in English. When you begin with easy-to-understand material, you are more likely to finish a story without feeling stuck or frustrated. This sense of accomplishment is incredibly motivating. As you read more, you will start to feel more comfortable with the language, and you'll notice that you can understand and use new words more easily. It's a powerful feeling when you finish a story and realize that you understood most of it. Furthermore, simple stories allow you to focus on learning without being overwhelmed by complicated vocabulary or grammar rules. Since the stories use everyday language, you'll begin to recognize words and phrases that are frequently used in conversations. This foundation makes it easier to speak in English without getting lost or forgetting what you want to say. Over time, reading simple stories helps you improve your listening skills as well. When you read regularly, you start to become familiar with the natural flow of English. You may even start picking up on common expressions or phrases that native speakers use in their daily conversations. This helps to prepare you for real-life situations where you can understand and participate more confidently. Starting with simple stories doesn't mean you should stop challenging yourself. As you grow more comfortable with basic material, you can slowly move on to slightly more complex stories. The key is to always choose stories that match your current level, ensuring that you're constantly learning while still enjoying the process. For example, once you've mastered beginner stories, you can move on to intermediate level stories that introduce new vocabulary and slightly more complex grammar. These stories will push you to continue growing without overwhelming you. The gradual progression keeps the learning process enjoyable, and it ensures that you are always improving. As you continue reading, you'll be surprised at how much your English skills improve. You'll notice that your understanding of grammar, sentence structure, and vocabulary becomes much clearer, all because you started with simple stories. Another reason simple stories are so effective is that they help you build practical language skills. The vocabulary and phrases you encounter in these stories are often the ones used in everyday situations. By reading these stories, you're preparing yourself to interact with people in real life, whether that's at the store, at work, or in social situations. Simple stories reflect real-life scenarios, and the language you learn from them is practical and useful. For example, stories about going to a restaurant can help you learn words like menu, waiter, and bill. Stories about traveling might teach you words like ticket, luggage, and airport. These are words and phrases you will use when speaking English in everyday situations. In the end, starting with simple stories is an excellent way to learn English. These stories help you build your vocabulary, improve your comprehension, and boost your confidence. With practice, you'll find that your English skills grow naturally, and you'll be able to tackle more complex texts in no time. Remember, the key is to start simple, and then progress at your own pace. By doing this, you'll lay a strong foundation that will serve you well in your journey to becoming fluent in English. After you've begun reading simple stories to build your vocabulary, the next step in mastering English is to focus on listening and speaking. Listening to a story first is a great way to get familiar with the pronunciation and flow of the language. By hearing the language in action, you can improve your understanding of how words sound, how sentences are structured, and how intonation can change the meaning of a sentence. Once you've listened to the story, you can then practice speaking along with it, which will help you develop more natural pronunciation and rhythm. Listening is a crucial part of language learning because it helps you get comfortable with the sounds of English. Unlike reading, where you can take your time and look up unfamiliar words, listening challenges you to absorb the language in its natural rhythm and speed. This is important because English has a specific flow, with words often blending together and certain sounds being emphasized over others. If you're not familiar with these patterns, it can be hard to speak and understand English fluently. When you listen to a story, you become more attuned to the pronunciation of words, especially tricky sounds that might not exist in your native language. For instance, English has sounds like the th, in, this, or thanks, which can be difficult for beginners. Listening to these sounds repeatedly helps your brain get used to them, making it easier for you to recognize them when you hear them again and use them correctly when speaking. Additionally, listening to stories gives you an opportunity to hear the natural flow of conversation. English speakers often use contractions, such as I'm instead of I am, or don't instead of do not. You may also hear phrases spoken quickly or with certain intonations that convey emotions or emphasis. Understanding these subtle cues is essential for speaking English fluently, and listening carefully helps you absorb these patterns. There are several ways you can practice listening. One popular method is to listen to an audiobook version of a story. Many audiobooks are available for beginner and intermediate learners, and they often come with clear pronunciation and a steady pace. While listening, you can follow along with the text to connect what you hear with the written words. This reinforces both your listening and reading skills. If you prefer a more visual approach, watching a video with subtitles can also be helpful. There are many educational videos, especially on platforms like YouTube, that are designed for English learners. These videos often include subtitles in English, which help you connect the spoken language with the written words. As you watch, pay attention to how the narrator speaks. Notice the rhythm, pauses, and stress on certain words. This will help you get a sense of how English sounds in a conversational context. For example, you could watch a short story or a scene from a TV show in English. After watching, replay the video and try to match the pace and pronunciation of the speaker. This will allow you to hear the same words multiple times, which reinforces your understanding and helps with memory retention. Once you've listened to the story and familiarize yourself with the pronunciation, it's time to practice speaking. The best way to do this is by repeating the sentences out loud, trying to imitate the way the narrator speaks. This exercise will help you improve your pronunciation and intonation, making your speech sound more natural and fluent. As you repeat the sentences, pay close attention to the stress on certain words, the pauses between phrases, and the overall rhythm of the language. For instance, in English, the stress on a word can change the meaning of a sentence. For example, I didn't say she stole the money, can have different meanings depending on which word is stressed. By practicing these nuances, you'll start to sound more like a native speaker. You can also try shadowing, a technique where you repeat the sentences immediately after hearing them. This method forces you to mimic the speaker's timing and intonation, which is great for developing fluid speech. Don't worry if you don't get it perfectly right away. The goal is to get more comfortable with the sounds and rhythm of the language over time. Speaking along with the story is a powerful exercise because it helps you put what you've learned into action. Even if you're not yet perfect at speaking, practicing out loud helps you become more confident and comfortable with the language. It's one thing to understand a language, but it's another to be able to produce it yourself. Speaking regularly allows you to practice forming sentences, improving your fluency, and expressing yourself more clearly. Furthermore, speaking along with the story helps you reinforce the vocabulary and phrases you've learned. By repeating the words, you not only improve your pronunciation but also commit those words to memory. This practice makes it easier to recall them when you need them in real conversations. It's similar to muscle memory. Your brain begins to recognize the patterns of speech, and the words start to come more naturally to you. Once you've practiced listening and speaking with stories, you can take your skills into real-life situations. Start by repeating what you've learned in daily conversations, or listen to native speakers in everyday contexts. The more you practice listening and speaking, the more confident you'll feel using English in your daily life. For example, if you're learning English for travel, listening to stories about people in airports, on trains, or ordering food at a restaurant will help you be better prepared when you find yourself in similar situations. By hearing these situations in stories, you're practicing the language you'll need in real life, making it easier to respond appropriately when the time comes. Listening first and then speaking is a highly effective method for learning English. Listening allows you to get used to the sounds, rhythm, and flow of the language, while speaking helps you practice those skills and build confidence. By incorporating these techniques into your language learning routine, you'll find yourself improving quickly, and speaking English will start to feel more natural and effortless. Keep listening, keep speaking, and watch as your language skills continue to grow. As you continue your journey of Learn English 24/7, one of the most effective ways to expand your vocabulary is by focusing on key words and phrases from the stories you read or listen to. When you're going through a story, whether it's a short tale or a longer narrative, pay close attention to the new words or phrases you encounter. These are the words that will help you build your vocabulary and improve your fluency in English. Understanding vocabulary is crucial for effective communication. The more words you know, the easier it will be for you to express yourself clearly and accurately. By focusing on key vocabulary in stories, you can learn words that are used frequently in real-life situations, and you'll understand how they're used in context. This makes it much easier to remember the words and to use them when speaking or writing. When you learn new words, you not only expand your vocabulary but also gain a deeper understanding of how English works. You'll learn how to form sentences more naturally, how to use different tenses, and how to create more complex expressions. Vocabulary is the building block of any language, and paying attention to it while reading stories will give you the tools you need to communicate effectively. While reading or listening to a story, keep a notebook or digital document handy to jot down any new words or phrases you come across. You don't have to write down every single word, just the ones that stand out or seem useful. These words are often key to understanding the story and can be applied to many different situations. For example, let's say you're reading a story where the characters go on a big adventure. You might come across words like journey, exploration, quest, or destination. These words are all related to the theme of adventure, and they'll come in handy if you want to talk about travel or personal experiences later on. Write them down and take note of how they're used in the story. This will help you understand their meaning more deeply. Once you have your list of new words, it's time to practice using them in sentences. This is where the real learning happens. Writing sentences with new words helps you cement them in your memory and makes it easier to incorporate them into your daily conversations. For instance, if you learned the word journey, you can try using it in a sentence like, "My journey to the city was long but exciting." This helps you connect the word to your own experiences, making it easier to recall when you need it. Let's look at an example. Suppose you're reading a story about a character who travels to a distant land and faces many challenges along the way. You might come across words like obstacle, courage, resolve, or determination. After reading the sentence that uses the word courage, you can try using it in different contexts. She showed great courage during the tough times. I need courage to speak in front of a crowd. The hero's courage helped him overcome the obstacle. By repeating the word and practicing different sentence structures, you're not only reinforcing the meaning of the word but also getting comfortable with how to use it in different situations. This will make your speech sound more natural and varied. One of the best ways to remember new words is by learning them in context. When you see how a word is used in a sentence or story, it's easier to understand its meaning and how it fits into everyday conversation. Unlike just memorizing lists of words, contextual learning allows you to see how words work together, making it easier for you to use them correctly in your own speech. For example, imagine you come across the word journey in a story. The journey to the mountain was difficult, but it was worth it for the breathtaking view. By reading it in context, you understand that a journey is a long trip, often involving challenges or new experiences. You can then apply that understanding when you talk about your own travels. Last summer, my journey to the beach was amazing. Contextual learning helps you retain the words and also understand the subtle differences in how similar words might be used. For instance, adventure might be more exciting and spontaneous than journey, which is typically longer and more planned. Recognizing these nuances helps you choose the right word for the right situation. The more you practice using new vocabulary in real conversations, the more comfortable you'll become with it. Try incorporating the words you've learned into your daily life. For example, if you've learned words related to food, like delicious, spicy, or tasty, try describing your meals using these words. If you've learned words related to work, like project, deadline, or team, use them in conversations about your job or school tasks. It's also helpful to try and use new words in writing exercises. For instance, write a short paragraph or story using the new vocabulary you've learned. This could be about your own journey to a new place, or a description of an adventure you had. Writing helps reinforce the words and gives you another opportunity to practice using them in different contexts. Another way to practice is to have conversations with a language partner or teacher. Whenever you talk to someone, try using the new words you've learned. This will help you remember them more easily and will improve your speaking skills. Focusing on key vocabulary isn't just about knowing a lot of words, it's about being able to use them effectively in conversation. As you expand your vocabulary, you'll find that you can express yourself more clearly and accurately. You'll also be able to understand more when listening to native speakers, as they often use a wide range of vocabulary. The more words you know, the easier it will be to keep up with conversations and understand stories or media in English. Ultimately, the goal is to make these words part of your active vocabulary, words that you can use easily and confidently in your speech. By focusing on vocabulary in context and practicing them in sentences, you'll become more comfortable using English in all kinds of situations, making communication feel natural and effortless. Focusing on key vocabulary while reading stories is a powerful way to expand your English skills. By writing down new words, practicing them in sentences, and understanding how they fit into everyday language, you'll steadily improve your fluency. The more you use these words in conversation and writing, the more natural they will feel. Keep building your vocabulary, and you'll find that speaking English becomes easier and more enjoyable. To make sure you truly understand and remember the English vocabulary and grammar you've learned, repetition is crucial. Repeating stories, whether by reading or listening, helps reinforce the knowledge you've gained and improves your fluency over time. When you revisit the same story, try to notice new details, whether it's vocabulary, sentence structure, or pronunciation. This will not only help with retention but also give you more opportunities to practice your speaking skills. Repetition is one of the most effective strategies for mastering a language. Just like learning any new skill, language acquisition improves with practice. The more times you engage with the material, the better you become at recognizing patterns, remembering words, and improving your fluency. When you read or listen to a story more than once, you become more familiar with the context, the sounds, and the flow of the language, which helps you internalize it. Each time you go over the story, it becomes easier to understand, and you may start noticing things you missed the first time. You might also find that sentences or phrases that seemed difficult earlier start to make more sense as you review them. This process builds your confidence and reinforces your learning, which is essential for speaking more naturally in English. Start by reading or listening to the story in its entirety. After you've gone through it once, go back and read or listen to it again. Focus on sections that you found challenging the first time. Maybe there were words you didn't know or sentences that were hard to understand. This time, pay extra attention to those parts. Try to read the sentences aloud and repeat them to improve your pronunciation and fluency. For example, if there's a sentence you found tricky, like, "The young boy bravely faced the lion in the forest," try saying it out loud multiple times. Focus on your pronunciation of words like, bravely, or, faced. Pay attention to how the sentence is structured and the intonation used when saying it. You might also want to practice speaking the sentence at different speeds to help with your fluency. It's common to encounter sentences that are difficult to understand at first. These might have complex structures or unfamiliar vocabulary. But repetition helps these sentences feel more natural over time. For instance, if you come across a sentence like, "Despite the heavy rain, they continued their journey through the dark forest," try repeating it until you're comfortable with the flow and meaning. Once you understand the context, it becomes easier to remember the vocabulary and use it in your own speech. When you repeat sentences, try to mimic the way they are spoken in the story. Listen to how the narrator stresses certain words, how the tone changes, and how the rhythm flows. Then, when you say the sentences yourself, try to replicate that same natural rhythm and stress. This is key to sounding more like a native speaker. Let's say you are listening to a short story about a character who goes on an adventure. In the first round, you get the general idea of the plot and some key vocabulary. In the second round, you notice a new phrase like, "overcome the obstacles," or, "take a leap of faith." At this point, focus on understanding how the phrase is used in context. You can practice using it in your own sentences, like, "I had to overcome many obstacles to finish my project." On your third pass, try reading or listening to the story again, but this time pay more attention to the smaller details, such as how characters react or the emotions behind certain actions. This deeper understanding will make it easier for you to recall the vocabulary and use it naturally in conversation. Fluency is about being able to speak smoothly and naturally, without having to pause and think too much. Repetition helps you develop fluency because it lets you internalize phrases and sentence structures. The more familiar you become with the story, the more easily you can recall the vocabulary and ideas, and the smoother your speech becomes. In addition to speaking, repetition also helps with listening comprehension. The more you hear the story or certain words, the more you get used to the sound and rhythm of the language. This makes it easier to understand native speakers when they talk quickly or use slang. Even after you feel comfortable with a story, it's important to continue reviewing periodically. Going over the story a few more times later on helps to keep the material fresh in your memory. Repetition, especially spaced repetition, helps ensure that you don't forget what you've learned. Try revisiting the story after a few days or a week to reinforce the words and phrases you practiced. When you constantly repeat and review stories, the language starts to feel more familiar and natural. The vocabulary and sentence structures become second nature, and you begin to speak more confidently and fluidly. By continuing this process, you ensure that what you've learned stays with you in the long run. Repetition and review are essential steps in language learning. The more you go over a story, the more familiar and confident you become with the language. Each time you repeat the material, you deepen your understanding, improve your fluency, and become better at using the language in real-life conversations. Keep reviewing, keep repeating, and soon speaking English will feel natural and effortless. One of the best ways to improve your speaking skills in English is by speaking along with the story. As you listen to or read a story, try to mimic the speaker's pace, pronunciation, and intonation. This exercise will help you sound more natural and fluent when you speak English. The more you practice speaking in sync with a story, the easier it becomes to speak confidently and with the right rhythm. When you speak along with the story, you're not only repeating the words, but you're also practicing the natural flow of the language. English speakers don't speak word by word, instead, they speak in phrases with a rhythm and natural pauses. By repeating sentences at the same time as the narrator, you're training your mouth, ears, and brain to become more attuned to this flow. This improves both your speaking and listening skills simultaneously. Imitating the pace of a native speaker also helps you sound more authentic. English has a distinct rhythm that can be difficult for non-native speakers to master. For instance, native speakers often stress certain words in a sentence to express meaning, while de-emphasizing others. Mimicking this pattern when you speak helps you sound more natural and less robotic. To start, choose a story that you are familiar with and comfortable listening to. It could be a short story, a chapter from a book, or even a video with subtitles. Ideally, choose something where the speakers maintain a steady pace, so you can follow along without getting lost. Listen to the story first, focusing on how the narrator or characters speak. Notice the speed of their speech, the rise and fall in their voices, and any pauses they make. This helps you get a feel for the natural rhythm of the language. Once you've listened to the story once, try speaking along with it the next time. As you hear the narrator's sentences, repeat them out loud, trying to match their pace and intonation. Pay attention to how they pronounce certain words, and do your best to mimic it. You can even pause the audio or video if needed to. Give yourself more time to repeat the sentence correctly. For example, if the sentence is, "She quickly ran to the store to buy some milk," focus on the stress of quickly and store, and try to match the speed of the sentence. Then, when you repeat it, make sure to mimic the same emphasis on those words and match the pacing of the speaker. Let's say you're listening to a story about a traveler on an adventure. The narrator might say something like, "After days of walking through the dense forest, he finally reached the mountain peak." As you listen, pay attention to how the narrator breaks up the sentence. They may say, "After days of walking," with a slight pause before continuing with, "He finally reached the mountain peak." Now, try repeating that sentence along with the narrator. Say it at the same pace, with the same pauses and emphasis on words like, "finally," and "mountain peak." This will help you improve your speaking rhythm, making it sound more natural. It will also help you build fluency, since you're practicing at the same pace as the narrator. Speaking along with the story has a direct impact on your fluency. Fluency isn't just about knowing the words, it's about how quickly and naturally you can string those words together. By mimicking the narrator's pace and rhythm, you're training yourself to speak in a smooth, continuous flow. This will make it easier to engage in real conversations without hesitating or searching for the right words. As you practice speaking along with stories, you'll also notice improvements in your pronunciation. You'll become more aware of subtle sounds and word stress, and the more you practice, the more natural your speaking will become. Another benefit of speaking along with the story is that it helps build your confidence. When you start matching the speaker's pace and rhythm, it reassures you that you can speak English just as naturally. The more you practice, the more comfortable you will become with speaking at a normal pace, rather than forcing yourself to speak slowly or haltingly. Speaking along with the story allows you to hear how English sounds in a natural setting, which is critical for building confidence in your own speaking ability. As you progress, try listening to stories with different accents or dialects. For example, you can listen to a story spoken in British English, American English, or Australian English. Each accent has its own rhythm and pronunciation, so by practicing with different accents, you'll become more adaptable and better equipped to understand various English speakers. This is especially useful if you plan to interact with people from different English-speaking countries. By practicing with a range of accents, you'll feel more comfortable understanding and speaking with people from around the world. Speaking along with a story is one of the most effective ways to improve your fluency in English. By mimicking the pace, pronunciation, and intonation of the narrator, you'll not only improve your speaking ability but also gain a better understanding of the natural rhythm of the language. This practice helps you sound more confident and fluent, making your speech more natural and authentic. So, choose your favorite stories, repeat them aloud, and see how your speaking skills improve over time. Once you've read and practiced a story on your own, the next step is to share what you've learned by engaging in conversations. Speaking with others is a powerful way to practice your English in real-life situations, helping you reinforce what you've studied and apply it naturally. It's also a great way to boost your confidence and improve your conversational skills. When you engage in conversations, you're using the language in a dynamic and practical way. It's one thing to read or listen to a story on your own, but when you discuss it with someone else, you're forced to think quickly, form sentences, and apply what you've learned in a live setting. This is where you'll see the real impact of your practice. It's not just about remembering vocabulary or grammar, it's about using those skills fluently and confidently when communicating with others. Speaking with other people also gives you an opportunity to learn new phrases and words. Often, in real conversations, you'll hear expressions and vocabulary that you might not encounter in stories, which helps you expand your language skills. Additionally, by asking questions or discussing parts of the story that you didn't fully understand, you can gain further insights and clarity, improving both your comprehension and speaking skills. To start, try discussing the story you've been practicing with a friend, language partner, or even in an online group. You don't need to focus only on the specific details of the story itself. Instead, talk about the overall theme, the characters, and the message it conveys. Doing this helps you practice forming opinions and expressing yourself clearly, which is essential for conversations in English. For example, if the story you've been reading is about a character going on an adventure, you could ask your conversation partner questions like, "What do you think about the character's decision to travel alone?" Or, "How would you have reacted in that situation?" This helps you practice speaking in complete sentences and expressing your thoughts while using the vocabulary you've learned. Another way to engage in conversation is by discussing parts of the story you found confusing. For instance, you could ask, "I didn't understand the part where the character said X. What do you think it means?" Asking for clarification in a conversation helps you solidify your understanding and ensures that you're able to process and apply what you've learned. Let's say you've been reading a story about a young woman who starts a new job and faces challenges in her workplace. After reading, you might sit down with a friend or language partner to discuss the story. You could start the conversation by asking, "What did you think of the main character's decision to speak up in the meeting?" Or, "How do you think she could have handled the situation better?" By asking open-ended questions like these, you encourage a more interactive conversation, where both of you can share your thoughts and opinions. This helps you practice speaking about the story in different ways, and also exposes you to how others express their ideas. Engaging in conversations provides a real test of your speaking skills, but it's also an incredibly rewarding way to gain confidence. The more you speak with others, the more comfortable you become with expressing yourself. In conversations, there's no script or perfect preparation. This is where you practice being spontaneous and thinking on your feet. Over time, this improves your fluency and reduces any hesitation or anxiety you may feel when speaking. Also, conversations help you get accustomed to different accents, speech patterns, and communication styles. Whether you're speaking with someone from another country or with a native English speaker, you'll learn how to adjust your listening and speaking skills to accommodate different speakers. This will make you feel more prepared and confident in real-life situations. The more you engage in conversations, the more you'll realize that this is how language is truly used. It's not about memorizing phrases or vocabulary, it's about being able to hold meaningful and dynamic exchanges. Conversations help you bridge the gap between the learning phase and the practical use of the language. You're using the language in a way that mirrors real-life communication, which is essential for reaching a level of fluency where you can comfortably speak English in any setting. As you progress in your language learning, consider joining online language exchange groups or conversation meetups. These groups are specifically designed for people learning languages, providing an excellent opportunity to practice speaking with others who are in the same position. Many language partners are happy to help you with pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary while giving you a chance to practice speaking in a relaxed, supportive environment. Engaging in conversations after reading and practicing a story is an essential step in your English learning journey. It helps you apply what you've learned in real-life situations, improves your fluency, and boosts your confidence. By discussing stories with friends, language partners, or online groups, you'll not only reinforce your knowledge but also continue to expand your vocabulary and improve your speaking skills. So, take the time to share what you've learned with others, and enjoy the process of growing as an English speaker. To truly improve your English, it's essential to make learning through stories a daily habit. Setting aside time each day to read, listen, and practice speaking will help you consistently engage with the language and gradually build your skills. The key to fluency is consistency, and by committing to daily practice, you're giving yourself the best chance to improve over time. Daily practice is crucial for long-term language retention and improvement. When you dedicate time each day to learning English through stories, you're reinforcing your vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation in a way that feels natural. Just like any other skill, language learning requires consistent practice to truly make progress. The more you interact with the language, the more fluent you will become, and the faster you will be able to use it comfortably in real-life situations. Learning English through stories offers a fun and engaging way to practice every day. You can easily incorporate it into your daily routine, whether you're listening to an audiobook while commuting, reading during your lunch break, or practicing speaking with a language partner in the evening. Even if you only dedicate 20 to 30 minutes a day, this consistency will add up over time and significantly improve your fluency. The first step in making English practice a daily habit is setting a specific time each day. This could be in the morning, during your lunch break, or before bed, whenever works best for your schedule. The important thing is to stick to that time and treat it like an essential part of your day. For example, you might decide to spend 20 to 30 minutes listening to a story each morning while having breakfast or reading a short story during your commute. Over time, this daily habit will become ingrained, and you'll start to look forward to this time as a way to unwind and practice your English. After listening to or reading a story, review what you've learned. Write down any new words or phrases you encountered and try using them in sentences. You can even repeat the story out loud, practicing your pronunciation and speaking skills. By dedicating a small amount of time each day to reviewing and speaking, you'll see steady improvement in your fluency. Imagine you start your day by listening to a 10-minute English story while having your coffee. Afterward, you take a few minutes to write down new vocabulary and review it. Later, in the evening, you set aside 10 minutes to speak the sentences out loud, focusing on pronunciation and rhythm. The key is to make it a daily routine that works within your lifestyle. Even small chunks of practice each day can lead to significant progress over time. Daily practice helps build muscle memory in your brain, which makes the language feel more natural. By continuously exposing yourself to English through stories, you start to internalize the language. You become more familiar with sentence structures, vocabulary, and common phrases, and you'll begin to automatically use these in conversations. Moreover, regular practice gives you the chance to review and reinforce what you've learned. You may forget a word or a phrase after a few days, but reviewing it daily ensures that it sticks in your memory. This continuous exposure builds your confidence as you see your progress over time. To keep your practice fresh and challenging, mix up the types of stories you read or listen to. Start with simple stories, then gradually move on to more complex ones as your skills improve. This way, you're constantly pushing yourself while still staying engaged and motivated. You could alternate between reading short stories, listening to audiobooks, watching videos, or even reading articles related to topics that interest you. This variety will help expand your vocabulary and expose you to different writing styles and speaking tones. Making learning English through stories a daily habit doesn't have to be time-consuming. You can integrate it into your routine without disrupting your schedule. For instance, you can listen to an English podcast or audiobook while exercising, driving, or doing household chores. Reading a few pages of an English book or story before bed can also be a great way to end the day with some learning. Additionally, try incorporating the stories you've read into your daily conversations. You can discuss the story with friends or language partners, or even use new words and phrases in your daily life. This way, you're not only practicing through stories but also applying what you've learned in practical, real-life situations. Making learning English through stories a daily habit is one of the most effective ways to become fluent in the language. By dedicating a small amount of time each day to reading, listening, and speaking, you will gradually build your language skills and gain confidence. Consistency is key. When you make language practice part of your routine, it becomes second nature. So, set aside time each day, stick to your routine, and enjoy the journey of improving your English skills, one story at a time. Learning English through stories is not only enjoyable but also a highly effective method for enhancing your speaking skills. By beginning with simple stories, focusing on listening, repeating sentences, and engaging in conversations, you'll steadily expand your vocabulary, improve your fluency, and boost your confidence. The key is consistency. Making it a daily habit to practice through stories will bring noticeable progress. Stick with it, and soon you'll find yourself speaking English with ease and confidence, making the language feel like a natural part of your daily life. Thanks and subscribe my YouTube channel.